Hello, this is Dan Bella with the New York NLP Institute. And the subject of today's video is Tony Robbins legit. Um, First of all, I want to start out by mentioning that I'm part of the New York NLP Institute. I created and founded the New York Institute over 20 years ago. So um, some of my students have asked me, well, was Tony Robbins legit? I mean, so the first question I asked them, well, legit specifically, how do you mean legit? Okay, there's no doubt that Tony Robbins is a phenomenon. He basically uh, he's probably one of the biggest, if not the most uh, famous speaker in the world. He's been known for to attract thousands and thousands of crowds, um, anywhere between 15 and 25,000 people. In addition, he also appeared in movies like Shallow Hal years ago, and he really is uh, kind of a charismatic individual who is able to compel large groups of people. So my question is, how is he legit specifically? Well, the subject of today's conversation will be basically to highlight from one person's perspective what Robbins represents. Now, personally, I've been following Robbins since the mid 80s, actually. For those who are familiar with him, he did one of his first firewalks back in 87, I believe. This was at the New Yorker Hotel on 34th and 8th Avenue. And that's when I first saw him. Um, at that time, the groups that he was attracting were anywhere between 300 and 500 people. He looked exactly like what you see in the picture right now. And from the beginning, he's had this very clear and defined message about transforming and motivating people uh, over time. And there's no doubt that he really has a stage presence that compels large groups of people to come and see him. He's also very, very good at marketing as well, which helps him really fill those seats. Uh, Now, for those who are not familiar with Tony Robbins' background, he studied, well, he studied with Jim Rohn, and then shortly afterwards, he studied with John Grinder, as well as Richard Bandler. Now, these two gentlemen were the co-developers of NLP, the foundation which studies human communication. So Robbins basically back in those days, he was his main shtick was the firewalk. He would start at 5. Generally, he would start his presentation around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 1 or 2 in the morning, do his firewalk. His firewalk would last till about 3:30, and by then we are expected the following day to come back on Saturday morning. And he would start again at 10 in the morning, and it would run till midnight, Saturday and Sunday. There is no doubt that Tony Robbins has unbelievable amounts of energy. I've seen him constantly, and I'm not sure where he gets his energy from. Although he claims that part of it, his energy came from his health program, which he still, I believe, advocates, which is natural hygiene, which is essentially eliminating meats and any kind of products which are toxic, according to him. And he focuses primarily on a vegan system. However, I suspect there were other issues that enable him to achieve these phenomenal levels of energy. Mostly, I believe, a genetic condition. Um, there have been many, many people who have tried to copy Robbins over the years, and they haven't been able to do so. Now, Robbins has been plagued recently with a series of controversies, as many of you know, including an interaction with a woman a year and a half ago, and where it looked like he was essentially pushing the woman across the stage. She was trying to defend herself, and he was just seemed to come across as a bully. In addition, he's also there are a series of allegations about inappropriate behavior back in the 80s. But that's really not my issue here. That's something to be resolved by others. What I'm focusing, and I will be focused in the next few minutes for you, is Well, what exactly, how is exactly legit? Well, there's no doubt that Robbins is a real motivator. Personally, I regard his UPW program as one of the top 10 experiences of my life. So I would recommend anyone who is interested in really experiencing an unbelievable amount of energy to go there. Now, although it's true, when I did attend, he would, the crowds were nowhere between 500 and 1,000 people. That's nowhere near what I hear right now, that he commands somewhere in the order of 15 to 25,000 people. The last time I actually worked as a volunteer for him back was around there 2003, 2004, and that's when his numbers were close to 5,000. That was pretty overwhelming. So I can only imagine what it feels like right now to be with amongst 25,000 year people. Now, in the early days, it was much more intimate. I mean, his groups were anywhere between 33 to 500, and you actually get a chance to actually walk up to him and really have a real chat with him. Um, so it was great to be part of that. The energy that he created and his staff were always very supportive. Now, naturally, over the years, his product and his image has become much more commercial. Um, in the beginning, he started out with with his firewalk as well as the publication of his book Unlimited Power. And over the years, however, he's been in movies such as Shallow Hal, and he basically became the infomercial king. So this enabled him to really reach larger and larger groups of people. By the 2000s, he already started incorporating his message within the internet. And this is one thing I want to give Robbins is he's truly a genius at marketing. He's able to take a product and constantly reinvent himself again and again and again. The core message is the same, but he's always able to take advantage of the newest um, technologies to really get his word across. Now, for those who are wondering, well, if I do go to UPW, will I be able to change? Will I be able to be a different person? Well, that's really an individual, person by person uh, case. I've seen people who go to UPW and are transformed. Then I've seen people who've spent gone to UPW and they've gone to other programs such as Date with Destiny, and they're basically the same. So a lot of it is very personal. My gut feeling and my own personal experience is that these programs are more motivational in nature. Even though he claims he's not a motivational speaker, I believe that basically the core of the program is motivation. Now, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people who do attend his programs are somewhere between 30 and 50 years old. Over 50% of them are in the health profession. And many of them have attended the program before. In fact, it's been estimated that somewhere between 30 and 40% of the people who attend his programs right now have attended before. So he has a lot of repeat customers, and that's really the basis of his work. Now, in terms of what he actually learned at the Tony Robbins, a lot of it is about setting goals, about creating an internal state of certainty within yourself, so you're able to, as you look at the goals you want to achieve, you're able to actually go ahead and make them happen. So he has a series of exercises that reinforce these goals and reinforce your desire to make it happen. Of course, the most powerful is the firewalk. That's again, even for those who have heard about firewalking not being a good conductor of heat, is a very life transforming experience, especially when you're in front of a bed of 12 feet of hot coals and you're asked to walk across them. One thing is to say, well, they really don't conduct heat. Another thing is go ahead and do it. And for Robbins, this is a metaphor for what life is about. Essentially, we're constantly faced with a series of challenges which appear to be unsurmountable. And yet, when you truly focus, you're able to set your mind to it, then things begin to happen. It's almost as if the universe begins to align itself with your goals. Now, this does not mean that You don't need a strategy, or you don't need a very specific set of calibration tools to get you from point A to point B, because there are a lot of people out there who are very motivated, who are very certain about their want, and they absolutely go nowhere. They always seem to be banging their heads against a wall. So this is where I began to see a difference between Tony Robbins and these two gentlemen, both John Grinder and Richard Bandler. Um, for those who are not familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, essentially is a term, a phrase which was coined by this gentleman, Richard Bandler, back in the late 70s, to describe a system of communication that enables people to achieve their goals more quickly and with less hindrance and less obstacles. Um, NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. So essentially, it studies the nonverbal and verbal patterns of successful people. And what Richard Bandler and John Grinder both discovered is that underlying the semantic differences between successful people, there are basic same patterns that are being repeated over and over again. So their work centered on the works of Milton Erickson, Virginia Satir, and other therapists and counselors who were very successful at that time. Um, they found these underlying patterns, and from there, those patterns were expanded and to apply to salespeople and so forth. So Robbins here was essentially one of the first ones to take those patterns and run with it. As I said before, Robbins is an absolute genius at marketing. He's able to take products from different systems and repackage them and present them as his own. But for those who are not familiar, one of his first book, Unlimited Power, was really not written by Robbins. In fact, most of it was written by contemporaries of both Richard Bandler and John Grinder, namely Wyatt Woodsmall and Eric Robbie. The story goes is that Simon and Schuster was very much interested in Tony Robbins and his charisma. However, he really was no position to write a book at that time. Um, and so instead, they commissioned both Eric Robbie and Wyatt Woodsmall to basically lay out the blueprint for what would eventually become Unlimited Power. Now, there's no doubt that Robbins added his own piece to the book. There's no doubt about it. However, the fundamentals were created by Wyatt Woodsmall and Eric Robbie. And for those who are interested in the link, you can email me and I can send you a link so you can look further into this. This does not take away, however, from the fact that Robbins was able to truly take a book and turn it into a national bestseller. That's something that very few people are able to do. Again, it has to do with marketing. It has to do with your ability to take an image and a concept, which for those is very intellectual in nature, and really narrow it down into a place where it can truly be accessible to the crowd, so to people in general. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize. Just because uh, it appeals to a certain cognitive or intellectual or philosophical, your ability to take that same concept and really spread it to a larger population is a real challenge. And this is where I really give Tony um, props. He's no doubt that he's a true marketing wizard and continues to be so. Uh, Proof of this is after 40 years of doing his program, he still really is the king of the hill. However, this is where I'm going to draw more distinctions. If you really are looking to create a system learn a system that you can actually apply and become a transformational speaker, Robbins is really not the person to go to. I would say start out with people like Richard Bandler or John Grinder. These will and study their systems, whether it be new code in the case of John Grinder or NLP in the case of Richard Bandler. The reason is because these systems will enable you to truly create an internal architecture on your own, um, where you no longer need to go to Tony Robbins for reinforcements. Essentially, what I've seen with a lot of people is that they keep going it over and over and over and over again. It's like there's no end to it. It's almost like they're getting a fix from Tony Robbins. So ideally, the message of Tony Robbins, as the message of Richard Bandler and John Grinder, is to create something in yourself. So you're able to create that sense of excitement in your life. So you no longer have to go to other programs to get a fix. The difference is between, let's say, someone who needs a cup of coffee every 2 hours and someone who wakes up with this amazing amount of energy every morning. There's a difference. So for those who go to Tony, they seem to be looking for a fix. And that fix will last anywhere between 3 and 6 months. Now, there's no doubt that you do get a sense of community that comes from going to Tony. But I found that sense of community doesn't last more than the weekend itself. So if you're looking for something that is truly transformational, I would say, and really learn the tools that Tony learned, I would say either work with Richard Bandler or with John Grinder. Of course, I am biased because and I took trainings with Richard Bandler, and I'm one of the founder of the New York NLP Institute. So there, in terms of legit, back to the original issue, is Tony Robbins legit? What I would say again is he's legit in terms of his ability to motivate people, in his ability to take people who are in a state of utmost despair and move them to a place of possibility and creation. However, that's where it ends. I remember very clearly a few years ago, I approached a young woman at one of the centers, and I asked her, she had taken the UPW Day with Destiny and so forth. And I asked her, what have you done with your life? And that is, how have you used these tools to really take your life to the next level? And mind you, the tone of voice I was using was very inquisitive. I was not in a judgmental state. I just wanted to see, what have you done? So she just gives me this strange look, as if I uttered some sort of uh, sentence or a taboo. And she looks at me and then she walks away. And at first I felt, well, maybe this is someone who perhaps is having a bad day. But I noticed again and again and again that a lot of the people who are taking these programs are taking it to basically fill an emptiness in their own life. And it's understandable. I mean, this world is very challenging, and it's very difficult to create that internal architecture that enables you to really feel good and be able to prevail when things are thrown in your face. However, I do find an abundance of people at Robbins events that are almost want to force something that is not there. So I would definitely warn somebody about thinking, well, I'm going to go to Tony Robbins, I'm going to be this amazing person. You might, but chances are you will be motivated for a weekend, 2 weekends, 3 weekends. And then unless you have something else to follow up with, you end up maybe returning back to Tony Robbins. And that might be okay. A lot of, as I said, if you see Tony Robbins as an experience, just like maybe I want to go skiing, I want to hike Mount Everest, or then yes, do go for it. But the purpose should be very clearly defined, which is, why am I going there? Again, I want to emphasize that Robbins is an amazing and transformational speaker, more motivational speaker, and some things do stick with you. However, you will always want to follow up with something more substantive. In which case, I would say go with NLP or John Grinder, and because they really have a system that enables you to create that internal architecture, that internal sense of navigation. Because there will be times in your life you won't have Tony Robbins next to you, or you won't have his tapes, and then you wonder, well, what I'm going to do. So you're essentially creating your own personality. See, one thing I found with a lot of Tony Robbins' attendees is that they want to be like Tony. Essentially, they see themselves being in a stage before thousands of people, everybody clapping, everybody smiling, and they're like Tony. But unfortunately, there's only one Tony. And part of the success, let's face it, has to do with genetics. The guy's 6 feet 7 inches tall. Has an unbelievable amount of energy, unbelievable enthusiasm, and he's very, very sharp. And he's a marketing wizard. And it's very rare to find all these things in one person. So I've seen person after person go to his events and expect to be this little mini Tony. And honestly, there's just room for one Tony. It's just like the Outlander. It's only one room for one. So I would encourage you to consider, well, how can you be yourself? How do you create a world where you're being yourself and really have a projection of your own unique self into the world rather than being another Tony Robbins? Because when you're being like Tony Robbins, it comes across as Tony. People say, oh, he's a cheap facsimile of Tony. So there's only one Tony. And one thing I give him credit for, he really is sincere. He's honest. Now, in his upbringing, he was certainly, it's a very unusual upbringing because according to him, he came from a very, very poor background. And earlier in his life, he had this encounter with this gentleman who gave him, on Thanksgiving, gave him food, gave him, and that sort of, I think, imprinted him this idea that he had to help others. On the other hand, there's always obsession with money and secular progress. And although that's not bad, I don't think that's everything. And so if you go to his seminars, uh, you will find almost everything is about material and secular progress. Very little about spiritual development. Very little. He does give lip service to it, no doubt. But the focus is how can I take my job, how to take my project, take it to the next level. So if you're looking for something beyond just secular, maybe you should look elsewhere. However, do go to his UPW because his program is definitely one of a kind, and it really gives you that sort of reference experience. As I said, for me, it's like the number one of the top 10 reference experiences I ever had. I did it when he was a younger guy back in the 80s, but basically still the same. I suspect that even though there are 25,000 people attending his program, he essentially is the same person, even in down to the jokes. So, in summary, what I would say is uh, Tony's great. He's legit when it comes to motivating people, and he's really created a platform for others to step forward. But what I would just caution those who are interested in going to his program for the first time is to really grab hold of their own sense of self. Because there is a strong tendency in the programs for everybody to be like Tony. They talk like Tony. They talk very fast. Their actions, their movements seem to be almost parroting what he does. It is creating your own sense of uh, body language, your sense of tonality, since you appear, move to the world that sets you apart from others. This is why I want to have more diversity, not just a world full of little Tony Robbins running around, thumping the chests. Um, Another thing also to keep in mind is this: for those who are not really strong, have a strong sense of self, these programs can be very overwhelming. It's almost like when you go to a Tony Robbins event, it's almost like you're being sucked into a vortex. Or not quite a cult of personality, but there is this whirlwind of energy that centers only on Tony. So you could be doing all these great things in your life, but you might as well put this on the side because it's only going to be a 20, 20, 20, 20. You may be talking to someone across, and yes, there will be some interest, but it's everything on Tony. And maybe that's because that's a Tony Robbins seminar. So hopefully what I've shared with you guys is an indication, my personal experience about what Tony is. And as I said, I think the world needs more people like Tony, but not like Tony in the sense that, but people that are truly sincere, powerful, and they're really looking to transform others. Uh, we want to move away from this kind of a monochrome, corporate, monolithic environment that so much makes a part of the urban life. We want to create systems that are truly transformational. And I say I would invite you to both see and Richard Bandler or John Grinder. Or if you want to know more about my program, what I do here in New York City, we have some uh, programs. But the first things I'm going to show is please our website, New York NLP Institute.com. My name is Dan Abella. I'm the founder of the New York NLP Institute. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. This way, you can continue to receive from me messages and videos on different topics within NLP. Um, and last but not least, we do have two programs that we are will be exploring. Let me see if we can find it here. The first is the NLP practitioner program, which is basically what Tony took back in the early '80s. Now, this is for those who are really serious about learning NLP. This is a 20, as I recall, yes, a 20-day, 20, 80-hour program um, that's distributed over 2 months, where we meet once a weekend and we go into the specifics of NLP and what it can do for you. For those who don't have the time or just want to test the waters, then I would encourage them to check out our NLP Bootcamp. Our NLP Bootcamp is a 2-day program which comes up every couple of months, and we go into the specifics of NLP. So either way, I hope this has been an informative program. It's given thrown some clarity on the phenomenon of Tony and his ability to really change people. So, but Tony's not the end. You basically need to move forward and create your own world. Create something that is distinct, not just another life coach or another motivational speaker. There are plenty of those out there, but really start doing things that are transformational, that really change this world. For instance, I'll give you an example. Despite all this talk about our advances in technology, it still takes us about 6 hours to fly from New York to Paris. So where's the advance? The advance is in information technology, right? But not so much in creating internal combustion engines and changing that with something different. Peter Thiel has mentioned that despite the appearance of changes in technology, we haven't changed that much. So I would encourage you, that you guys become more inventors, creating new products, not just networks or social systems, but real products that can change the face of humanity and takes us to another level. Okay, so and hopefully these things can help you. As I said, I hope this is the beginning of a journey for all of you, because it's an exciting journey and it's one that keeps hope alive. So despite all the challenges that we run into during the course of our life, you can continue to realize there's something inside. There's a flame inside you that will keep you going. And that's why Tony or any of these programs are great to go to. Okay, so I hope this has been an informative, and I hope I've clarified, is Tony Robbins legit? And this question. So if you have any other questions, again, I invite you to go to our website, New York NLP Institute, or subscribe to our YouTube channel, and I'll be more than happy to answer. So until the next time, enjoy, stay well, and be well.